Hello and welcome to 52 Weeks. This week we're going to be continuing through Chapter 4 in the Parks, Civic, and Open Spaces. And specifically we're going to be looking at the next 6 weeks on the types of parks and public space that are discussed in Chapter 4. So when we look at the neighborhood parks and playgrounds, we can understand this as play for all citizens. Warren Manning wrote, "Within the city limits, small parks should be established within easy walking distance of homes of citizens who have no means for driving and cannot well afford the frequent use of the trolley." So early on in 1900, there was this idea of providing equitable park space and green space for all city residents so that there would be a way to get to somewhere without having to drive or walk. This is essentially where we're at in urban design, in city planning, and urban planning, where we're looking at walkable cities. This is why Harrisburg is attractive, because we have such access to these green spaces. We do have, as we looked at before, we looked at the large parks and linear parks. Now we're really focused on the neighborhood level, where within a block or two or three that you can get to a park and enjoy that. There are many small pocket parks around Harrisburg that many residents find very helpful and a great way to just recreate. And we also look at ways to break away from the city life and kind of rest. It also allows for a lot of play to happen with our kids. And so that's something that needs to be considered in any of these urban areas. So goal 411, develop a network of neighborhood playgrounds and parks within walking distance of all residents, determining locations through the consultation with neighborhood associations. So right from the get-go, goal 4.11 is really having a call to work with neighborhood associations so that we think of where these parks should be happening. This is at the block level, the small neighborhood plans that need to be developed. Where is it that we need to see parks or build up ones that currently exist? This is looking at some of the things that were already called out. There's a few that are in here in Midtown, East Harrisburg, South Allison Hill, North Allison Hill, and Uptown. These are very specific areas that can be strengthened that currently exist, or ones that should be, that are recommended to begin to be developed. There was this movement started in 2016-17 with the renovations of 5 parks in Harrisburg. I'll include the link in here, reference for that. Many of those places have undergone renovations. This initiative connected with Capital Region Water and understanding permeability and runoff in these spaces along with play. So those things should be considered as well. So in the community planning and engagement process back in 2016, there was a clear desire of all residents to build the capacity in the neighborhoods. Strategic planning, building the administration structure, building sustainability, ongoing management, linked to ongoing education, linked to partnerships. So there's a collaborative nature that needs to be developed. I talk a lot about this with community capacity building. Right here is the essential. If you were to look at your neighborhood parks as this incubation for play, for discussion, social discourse, this is all the public realm. This would be a starting point to help knit the social capital back together. This is a clear part of the social infrastructure that's missed. I think this is what was in the Berg, talking about the palaces of the people. This is missed in that element. How do we begin to tie this together for everyday common occurrences? Some of this is the dog parks, the dog walks that are out there, just the common places where we can sit on a bench and people watch or enjoy the nature that's around us, and then interact with our local neighbors that live nearby. So on a side note, when we look at neighborhood parks and playground space, there's a really great park that I stumbled upon in New York City. This was 2 years ago. It's Columbus Park down in outside of Chinatown. So this park is a really amazing park. So it's got a whole mixture of uses. It's got tennis, it's got basketball courts, playground, we've got seating bench areas, we've got areas for skateboarders that hang out. There was a really interesting mix of people, very diverse ages and ethnicities all around in this park. So it was very clear when I was in this park visiting that I was a visitor. I knew this was a neighborhood park, or I had that feeling walking through, and kind of all eyes were watching me, that I was entering into this space that was pretty intimate for the neighborhood. So Columbus Park is a very interesting precedent to look at, because it has the potential of showing a mixture of uses, a mixture of people, as well as a defined space. And it was very clear as a visitor coming into it that I knew I was entering into someone else's public but private space. How does this look? We go back to the objective 4.11.1 integrating the playgrounds into systems. This involves the greenways, the small streets, living streets, and proposed public squares, promoting their use and maintenance. So we're going from the larger existing park structure to the living green grid, and then kept putting together this green space system that needs to be developed. We've seen this diagram again, and this is why this diagram is important to go back on as a reference. It's an abstraction of how we could be thinking of our city and the green spaces. There are many opportunities to integrate public art into projects involving improvements to streetscapes, parks, and open spaces. That's important to be considering, though public art can be proactive and often spurs debate based on differences of taste. If handled well, it can also provide good opportunity for healthy community engagement. So this goes back to the neighborhood associations. I really feel strongly in this old idea of the Council of Communities or Council of Neighborhoods. I think getting back to that, understanding within the redrawing of our wards in Harrisburg that we rethink this, thinking about the 15 wards and the 28 precincts. So there should be a council from each ward and precinct to come together and voice ideas. It is also a place where we can have a neighborhood-based learning community. All right, this is a PLC, professional learning community. It's no different that we be learning from each other as neighbors about best practices, not only within our neighborhood, between neighborhoods, but out there in the nation. We tend to dismiss things that come up at a larger scale and think that it can apply. We have to take the necessary time to contextualize that for Harrisburg, our city demographic, or our city population. This is research and reference and research, and also planning, strategic planning that needs to be put in place. If we continue to just pull all these ideas together and say, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this, we're running around ragged trying to solve problems that really don't apply or have not been applied because someone is unwilling to take the necessary work to knit this back. Part of that's in government that needs to happen. Part of this is in community groups. We've lost that ability to socialize and plan together and plan well. So I think this is where the parks can actually help knit that together. In this objective 4.11.2, include vacant property in the public space system. So any of that vacant, we talked about this before, that vacant property becomes put back into a green space initiative, and it's processed in a way so we can look at using the property declared as blighted or in tax repository for public purpose. Let's put that back into the public. Review the redevelopment authority regulations. So understanding Harrisburg's HRA's regulations and figuring out that we get these properties back into someone who's going to care and maintain them. And also, can we get them to plant and maintain vacant lots? How do we get that system and structure established? This is not hard to do. It takes a little bit of work to plan these systems out and then look at for sustainable funding structures that will continue to provide for maintenance, whether that could be a volunteer effort in a public, private, and government policy or project. These are things that we should be talking about because this can be done. A part of that is also reclassifying the school playgrounds, joint city, school-city venues, closed and leased school spaces. Any of these places should be considered as public property that can be used by the public. It's taxpayer funds that originally put those properties into place. They should be reconsidered for public use. Any school property should be retained and reconverted into parks. This was looking at William Penn and Bishop McDevitt at the time, and any closed elementary schools. There should be ongoing discussion within the district and the residents around those buildings to see how do you make that a place where it becomes a learning center and functioning for a neighborhood that's right around it. It's not closed off and saved until we can extract the most amount of value out of that property. This is hurting us. This has hurt us in the past. Many of those projects and those properties have not done well. They've sit around, they've deteriorated, and sadly, that investment way back when has been lost, and all we see it as, we wait till it just deteriorates, till we demo it, and then we lose it forever. We got to get past the demolition mindset. We got to get past this transactional mindset of both property and people. Our property matters and our people matters because the property is part of our community. It's about what we see every day, and it is also about an economic engine. It's all about our social infrastructure, and our people also matter. Are we taking care of the people that are out there in education and workforce? This ties back into the triple bottom line of people, place, and economics. So we can also create a system of local dog parks. Dog parks are this ideal use to activate small vacant properties. Imagine have a dog park network that's run by some nonprofit or at least by a website, and it's interconnected within the green space system that can look at management and upkeep. This is something that can be done within these neighborhood associations that begin to strengthen, begin to set up some bylaws, but are interconnected between a council of communities. This is how this all can begin to play out.